This is where Leah Sottile comes in. She is a widely published investigative journalist who focuses on political and religious extremism. Her first ever book is called When the Moon Turns to Blood, Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell, and a story of murder, wild faith, and end times. Leah, is it going to be difficult to find people who maybe don't espouse some of the same views that Lori and Chad may have had when they're looking for a jury?
I think it's a great question. I think it will be very easy to find lots of people who don't think zombies are a part of their religious beliefs. But a big part of my investigation into this case was looking at what exactly were the circumstances that allowed these two people with these really radical religious beliefs to meet. And what it showed me was that they existed really in this pretty large subculture that exists in the Mountain West of people who are really paranoid, who have ideas that the LDS people are going to be the 144,000 that are prophesied in the book of Revelation as the chosen people. So I don't know that it will be necessarily difficult, but it will be quite easier being in Boise, where there's a much larger population to draw from.
Yeah, and you'll need the bigger group because Chad Daybell wrote lots and lots of books about all this really out there stuff. And so presumably, you've got to imagine, Leah, that a lot of people bought those books, read those books, and follow the teachings of those books. And maybe they didn't think about, the zombies and dark spirits, etc. But if they do espouse a lot of these views, is that going to be part of the questionnaire? Do you think that they're going to start asking people, what do you think about killing zombies?
Well, I'm not sure that they'll ask about killing zombies, but I think that they will be asking a lot about what do you think about the 144,000, about the book of Revelation. I think that what's really interesting about this case is that Chad Daybell was not the first person to write about these ideas that, the LDS people are the chosen people, that they'll have to save the Constitution, and that, when things get bad, they'll be the ones to survive. There have been several other people who espouse really similar ideas before him and after him, and that continue to talk about these same ideas in this region of the country. So, yeah, I think it's reasonable to believe that that will be on the questionnaire. Some sorts of ideas, questions of ideas of how close are your religious beliefs maybe to what they believe? It's a good question.
And they will be, whoever sits on that panel, they will look across the courtroom and more than likely see Chad Daybell's 5 kids who support him, despite the fact that their mother is one of the murder victims and was extraordinarily healthy before suddenly, at the ripe young age of like 48 or so, died in her sleep and now has been exhumed and has been determined to be a victim of homicide. So much. I hope you'll come back. You're a wealth of knowledge, and I just love to have more conversations with you as we progress through this trial.
Sure thing. Thanks.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.